So, a little bit on how to choose the right water pipe. There are a number of things out there that you can look at, and typically, the fancier they are, the more expensive they are. The better glass they are, the more expensive they are. The better known maker, the more expensive they are. So, glass is not cheap. If you buy the Chinese glass that's real basic, chances are you're probably going to break it a lot faster and be replacing it. So in your lifetime, you'll end up spending more on more bongs that break more often than if you buy something that's a little more durable that might survive it. That being said, am I a proponent of silicone? No. I will never smoke out of silicone as my preferred way to go. It's just not a good thing. So, what kind of bong do you want? Well, there's a couple of different things that you need to look at. And this is possibly the most standard one that there is. I mean, it's called a flask bong or a funnel bong, depending on how you look at it. And it is based on basically a flask that you would use in scientific experiments and things like that. So, that's why it got the flask bong name. And this one is broken. That's one of the points I want to make is it's typically better to have a bong that has a separate stem and piece here, because if you end up with a bong, ooh, watch yourself, Jim, that is, this is built into it. Well, if this breaks, you're screwed. But if just the stem breaks right there, that's not so big of a deal. And those break all the time. As a matter of fact, this one here is broken, but it works, so I'm still using it. So this being the most standard bong, then going on up to things that get a little more percolated. This is the same kind of bong, but a percolator added into it. Am I a big fan of percolators? No. Though it does change the hit and makes it more mellow. It doesn't necessarily cool it off. That's not what's happening. But percolators basically waste weed. If you think about it, the smoke is what you're trying to get into your lungs. And the smoke particles, when they touch the water, they get absorbed into the water. So if you make more bubbles, you're just making it to where more smoke gets into the water. And that's not necessarily good at all. That actually makes it to the point where your bong water gets dirtier faster. So having a percolator, if you're susceptible to bronchitis, you have lung issues, stuff like that, well, percolator is not a bad thing. It makes the hit more mellow. But just realize you're not getting a cooler hit, you're just getting a less dense smoke hit. So that's another kind of bong, but then they go up to getting a little crazy. And this is an example of that, because not only is there one percolator, but there's a second percolator as well. And you'll see variations of these things in rain trees and perforated perks that are in there. But the reality is, do you need two? No, actually. And you get a very big detriment to having two. And that is the fact that the space in between here is not only enclosed, which makes it impossible to reach it with a brush or anything, but even if you use stupid solvent cleaners like isopropyl alcohol, that is bad for you and causes cancer and stuff like that, that ISO can get in there, but you can't ever get a really good shake on it. You can't get salt in there. It's just, well, maybe it cleaned it. I don't really know. I'm not sure. Well, this is one of those things where being not sure about it is a very important thing. I mean, this really is a germ creating area. If you think about it, all it takes for any germs to grow is water. Well, it's filled with water. It takes a food source. Your first bong hit actually has chunks of weed that weren't burnt all the way. So there's plenty of food for billions of germs. And third, it needs energy, and that's provided by light. Well, you're not doing your bong hit in the dark, so yeah, it's got everything it needs to grow, and it will do that. So if you have a bong like this, it's actually pretty smart to use something in the water as a preventative that keeps things from sticking, as long as it kills germs, microbes, bacteria, and fungus. Of course, I am talking about Mile High Cleaner right there. So, double percolators, highly against them. That is silliness. It just doesn't make any sense at all, because now you're making more and more and more bubbles, so that hit becomes, yes, even less potent, but easier on your lungs. Well, that means you just lost out on a whole bunch of bud, because you're making this cloud that's very small, very light colored. It's not as dense as smoke. So if you take a bong hit that is much smaller, you're going to save your lungs. And yes, it might be a little more harsh because you're getting all of the things that come with it. It's a full amount of smoke is what I mean by that. It's not something that's really filtered off. So, you know, if you're taking this hit, you want it to be the most potent it can be. Well, that's without without percolators at all, and definitely without two percolators. That's just overkill. So that's part of fluid dynamics, how bubbles create more and things like that. But let's go back to the bongs themselves. Now, there are other silly bongs, and this is another example of a silly bong. Now, that's pretty cool, and when you take a hit from it, it's a lot of action. It's kind of cool looking. But beyond that, it's a silly bong, because that's a lot of surface area to clean. That's a lot of pain in the ass, where you could have a little bit of resin still stuck inside here, and if you're not cleaning it physically by using like the Canamag magnetic scrubbers that would fit through all of these things, then you're running the risk of having that same chunk of resin in there, which, you know, if you're using solvents like isopropyl alcohol and then you're inhaling after this, well, you just soaked that chunk of resin in solvent. Then you rinsed it all out, great, and it did everything, but rinsing is not washing, it's rinsing. So that chunk of resin is still in there, and it's still been soaked in isopropyl alcohol, and now you're smoking through it. Well, that isopropyl alcohol, that's made from fossil fuels, and, you know, it's like huffing paint. It's not as dense as that, but if you're doing it all the time, guess what? You're still having damage coming from it. So this kind of bong, not real great, but again, one that would benefit from a preventative. There are 3 out there that are known, and one that prevents resin from sticking. Of the 3, Mile High Cleaner is by far the most cost effective. So, silly bong. Don't buy more than one percolator if you want a percolator at all. You really only need that if you have some sort of lung issues or something. But, you know, standard bong, okay, that's what most people are going to get. Hey, let's kick it up a level and have one with a percolator. All well and fine. That's great. I mean, these are all easy to access. You can get to both ends of it. They don't have a locked-in stem, which means if you break this, you're screwed. If you know, there's all kinds of little problems with those kinds of things. So then you end up going to the other end of the spectrum. Now, this is a tiny bong. It's only about 2/3 the size, let's get in the right way, of what a real bong would be. Is that good? Actually, there are benefits to this. The things that affect smoke are oxygen and sunlight. And I say it affects smoke, it actually affects everything. Okay, paint on the wall is affected by sunlight. Oxygen affects paint as well. So all of these, the oxygen and sunlight, you know, if you have a bag of chips, you leave it open and they're stale the next day, that's because of oxygen and moisture. If you have a bag of chips that are in a clear bag, they don't have any printing on it, you just put it in a Ziploc, you put it in sunlight, and even though it's closed, it'll also be stale or change the flavor of it. and even make the color go away just because of sunlight. So oxygen and sunlight affect everything. So the more time you have between the burn point and your mouth, or your lungs in reality, the more that oxygen and sunlight and other things are going to be affecting it. So as you grow up in sizes of bong, this one's bigger, so it's going to have more of an effect. This one's even larger, so it's going to have slightly more of an effect that way too. And people who smoke out of the 6-foot bongs, basically they're losing a significant percentage of the things that they're trying to inhale. And, they're actually getting stale smoke by the time they get the bong hit up to their lungs. So not really an optimum way to work if you're trying to get, the best hit. And that's what we're really out for, is having a nice hit. So when you get this, you're going to find that in the opposite direction. So we went with this as being kind of the standard. This is what everybody smokes from. And if you go up to something like this, which is very percolated, it's a much mellower hit because you're getting less dense smoke. With this one, it's fresh and dense smoke. So it probably is the harshest on your lungs. But if you are the kind of person that likes a hit and likes to have it really affect you, this is going to do the best job. So if you take really tiny hits out of a smaller bong, you're going to get easily just as stoned as if you took a massive hit out of a double percolated super tall bong that has a lot of effect by sunlight, transference of smoke particles into the water, a lot of effect by oxygen. So there's different trade-offs. I guarantee you this will actually have a really big hit for you. But the other end of the spectrum is true, because this is a harsher hit, so you may not even be able to take as big of a hit. It might hit you real hard, or lock up your throat and give you that raw throat, which leads you back to this one, which is, like I say, it's going to be a mellower hit. It's up to you as to what you think is the best. Personally, I prefer a very small bong with a very small hit, because I'm a cheap bastard. There's no reason to go any more than this. And the more you have this kind of limited space up here, the less off-gassing of stink you have and things like that. So there's a couple of different reasons why I like the smaller bowls. But when I go over to my buddy's house, this is actually Austin's wedding bong, no less. You get you can take a hit when you're doing this one. I mean, it's got some ability to fill your lungs with less chance of triggering the cough reaction. Because let's face it, you're smoking something. You're inhaling smoke, and smoke is typically not good for your lungs. Which is why you can get bronchitis and little, inflammation of the tissues, which might make you cough a lot. And you see that a lot with some of the people that dab a lot or smoke a lot online, that they will do these hits that they're coughing for 5-10 minutes because it has had such an effect. Well, I'm fairly sure that that's not all that great for you, which is why people go on to starting into concentrates and doing dabs, or then vaping or whatever, to keep it as mellow of a hit as possible. And they're going to be a full range. You'll probably end up doing all of it through your lifetime, because, like when I started off, I loved the big honking bong hits, and you got to cough to get off kind of thing. Well, that's a true thing, but you're adding kind of an internal pressure and blood flow situation to the bong hit, which is why you get a really big head rush when you cough. So there's a lot to that as well. Anyway, I think this is probably enough for this, and I'm wondering if anybody even gets to watch this. But if you are watching this, I implore you to give a try to Mile High Cleaner. The reason for it is that Mile High Cleaner costs less than isopropyl alcohol. That's a great thing in the first place. It is all natural. And most people, when they hear the phrase "all natural, organic," they say, "Well, that means I'm going to have to use twice as much, and it's going to work really crappy." Well, that's actually the exact opposite of this. Mile High Cleaner, you use way less than any other cleaner out there. And you use tools to clean, which is a big plus in my book, because if you can actually physically move the resin, you know it's gone. But it's odorless, tasteless, inert, organic. It kills germs, microbes, bacteria, and fungus, yet is so natural you can eat it. And that is the reason why you can also put it in your bong to prevent resin from sticking. That's a pretty big thing, because when you consider that it takes about 15 drops to clean this little bong, and I can do it in under 2 minutes, going all the way up to, because this one's about a 15-inch bong, it's going to take about 30 drops to clean this one. So depending on size and everything, that's a great thing, but you use half that amount to prevent resin from sticking. So if you put 7 or 8 drops in this, which is next to nothing, and is odorless, tasteless, inert, antimicrobial, antibacterial, antifungal, yet you can eat it, it's going to prevent the resin from sticking. It's not going to affect the flavor, and it is going to make it to where the next day you can rinse it in hot water and it'll come clean. If you've got a really bad situation, you add a smidgen of detergent and shake that around with a little bit of hot water, and then it'll be clean. And the detergent I like, if you're kind of freaking out on, hey, I'm never going to use detergent in my bong, well, the detergent I like is Dawn. The reason why is because they're the ones that they use the Dawn to clean up wildlife after an oil spill. They have found nothing that affects a human so far with Dawn. And I say so far because, it's all like those terms, known or suspected carcinogen. Well, we're pretty sure it's known carcinogen, but we got to leave a back door open just in case. Well, so far they've found nothing wrong with Dawn. As a matter of fact, instead of saying things like on the warning labels for Dawn, if you read it, it actually says, instead of like, call the poison control number, or consult your physician, or seek medical attention, or whatever it may be, like it says on isopropyl alcohol, well, on Dawn it actually says, if you get it in your eyes, flush it with water. If you drink it, drink water to dilute it. It doesn't even mention call the physician. It doesn't say poison control center number. It is such a harmless compound that, it really hasn't found many problems. So I was pretty impressed with that. And I think as more companies come up with better products like this, the better off we'll all be. So trying to keep it good for a nice hit for everybody in the future. So I think that's it for me. Again, have a nice hit, guys. So. Is that over? Okay, are we done? Are we done? Okay, no, we're not. I think that's done. But it's still, camera's still on. Okay, how do you log